Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel for a quick update on Bitcoin and Solana. So after last week's retest of the 87.5 resistance that we talked about in our previous video, it looks like potentially second time is the charm, starting off strong coming into Monday, pushing back above this previous resistance. 87.5 right now is the area to keep your eyes on. If we're successful in getting above a range that I'm going to talk about in a second, potentially Bitcoin could be showing us this crazy signal which historically has fired, 85%, 100%, 200% moves to the upside. So we'll get into that. Right now, 87.5, this is the area that you really need to keep your eyes on. We rejected off this last week and now we're pushing back above it. So super important level. As you can see over on the daily time frame as well, we are coming into the 50 TMA, one of my most favorite moving average strategies that we've talked about previously on this channel. We're going to look at the weekly time frame for this one in a second, but once again, reiterating what we said from the last video, 87.5 up to around about 90k is going to be the resistance that we absolutely need to shatter. If you want to see an earth-breaking move, we do have the 50 TMA coming in at round about 89. We've got the top of the Bollinger Bands coming in at 90. We got the top of this resistance slope from the all-time high pushing us down to round about 92k. So anywhere between this 87.5 up to 92, I do think it's going to take potentially a week or so, a little bit of time to kind of get out of this range and have some solid retests to figure out what we're going to do next. Worst case scenario, something that you should probably keep your eyes on is the Bitcoin CMEs. Over the weekend, we have pushed up, meaning that we have left a CME gap back down here at 84.5. Another reason why this retest zone anywhere between, let's say, 87.5 up to around about 90 for now until our next video, this is really where you want to keep your eyes on. You don't want to see any strong rejections from this zone, because if we do, there is a potential that we could come back down to 84.5. Just putting it out there. However, much higher time frames, things are looking good. Like we've been saying, the macro, I really wouldn't be too worried right now. While we haven't 100% touched the 50 TMA on the weekly, down here at 74, another kind of worst case scenario level to keep your eyes on, it does look like we have wicked almost down to this level. And historically, from previous cycles, when you are in a bull run and you've managed to push above it, retest it as support, we can see over here, 2019, we saw 155% moves, didn't manage to hold it here, crashed, managed to hold it here, 650% move, not calling for that, just the data. You can see over here, we fell down from here, held it as support at this level, 86% move to the upside. You can see over here, held it as support on a wick, 57% move to the upside quite quickly. Over here, you can see back tested it on a wick, 195% move. Over here, back tested it on a wick, 120% move. So once again, worst case scenario, keep your eyes on 74. Also keep your eyes on about 84 for the CME gap, but this is all kind of down to what happens next on the daily time frame. This is why it's super important to get above 87.5. It's super important to start pushing above this 90k region, but we are coming into quite a few confluences around this region, so I don't think it's going to happen this week. I think something like, where's my drawing tool? I think something like this, probably testing some of these regions and expanding, coiling up before that next move to the upside. That is what I think is going to happen. But if we do come into contact with 90k or something and get some strong rejections, we'll let you know where the next levels are. But again, 84k, lower time frame, worst case scenario. Also 50 TMA, really not the end of the world, around about 74k. If we hold this, I think we should be looking very strong. But again, in the macro, these are all just kind of targets that aren't too far apart from where we are right now. In my opinion, I personally think the bottom is in at 76. Just wanted to let you know that we do have a CME gap at 84. However, higher time frames, we're holding all of these super important levels that we've been talking about on the channel. In my opinion, this is much more of an important hold that we have kind of wicked down to and started to have a push up on over kind of like the 50 TMA on the weekly. So just something to keep note of. If we are coming over to the total altcoin market cap, personally, I think we've seen most of the gains for the alt season this cycle. I just think there's been, too much this cycle, and I don't think we're going to have as much of an explosion as previous cycles in terms of altcoins. Bitcoin dominance does still look super, super strong right now. However, I do just want to show you this chart just playing devil's advocate, because just because I don't think there's going to be a super huge alt season, I'm still positioned in some of my favorite alts like Solana, because I do think they're going to do well, and I do think the Bitcoin dominance is overextended right now. I just don't think it's going to do this or this, but potentially something like this roll down. You really see kind of Bitcoin push above 90k, come back up to 100, then you start seeing altcoins go crazy, and then we'll see where things go from there. But just wanted to play devil's advocate with this chart. Either way, even if I don't think the altcoins are going to do this kind of crazy move, which we've seen in previous cycles, like a 10x or something, I do still think the altcoin market cap will be making a new all-time high. So kind of like how we looked at the previous chart, we could expect, you know, anything from maybe 80 to 100% move for Bitcoin. Personally, I think 85. That's going to be kind of my macro target right now, 140k. I talked about why in previous videos. This is a super important trend line, which you can barely see right now, but yeah, previous cycle highs have come into confluence with this every single time. Of course, it's been retroactively fitted, but yeah, I think some strong confluence is coming at 140k, 85% move potentially on the books for Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance could start coming down when confidence resumes, when Bitcoin starts to push back above kind of 90 to 100k. And what does that mean for altcoins? I think it could mean that, you know, the total altcoin market cap, if you're holding the right ones, you know, total alt market might see some crazy move to the upside, all the way back up to its previous all-time high. And I think coins like Solana are going to do really well on this. Also, I just want to show you a transition chart. So over here on red, you can see this is when Donald Trump got inaugurated back around about, I think it was January the 20th, 2017. This is when he got inaugurated, 20th of January, 2025. And this is where Biden got inaugurated back in 20th of January 2021. And you can often see there's transition periods with each of these new presidencies. So you can see when Trump first came into office back in 2017, you know, we went up a little bit, we went down, and this segment here was about 2.5 months worth of a transition phase before, you know, Trump's policies started to take place. Markets were super confident. Things don't happen overnight. You know, when you have a shit presidency like with Biden, economic policies, they take a while to overturn. They take a while to, you know, you have new policies come in. They don't just change overnight. Like with the tariffs happening right now, I think this is what we're seeing, some short-term turmoil. There's always a transition phase between presidencies. So, you know, when Biden stepped in, he was still enjoying, you know, the benefit of Trump's policies. The markets kind of rallied for about 2 or 3 months under his administration when he first stepped in. Then his policies started to come in, then people started to lose confidence in his presidency, and you can see things were kind of downhill from there. They did resume, but you can argue that a lot of this kind of forward price action on Bitcoin is 4-year cycle related. People believing Trump's going to come back into presidency, pricing that in, and then also the pricing in of the ETFs, following by the actual ETFs, less so rather than economic policy. So just wanted to highlight this. In my opinion, what we're seeing right now is a transition phase into Trump's presidency, and I think the tariffs personally are good economic policy. In my opinion, I think confidence is starting to come back into the market, and with good economic policies, we're probably going to see a growth like this again. It just doesn't happen overnight. There is always a transition phase between presidencies, and that is something to duly note. So that's kind of everything that's happening right now with Bitcoin. I think macro, we're looking extremely good. I personally think the bottom is in, but lower time frames, 87.5 up to round about 90k, this is going to be a super important level for us. We're going to probably consolidate for a while. We're probably going to see a little bit of resistance between kind of 90 to 92, but once we get above this level, you know, we could go much higher. And if you do see a rejection, 84k, super important level. Worst case scenario, 50 TMA, 74k. But again, I personally think the bottom's in, just letting you know those targets. Now, on the Solana side of things, macro, things could not look better. Again, this disgusting wick to the downside over here, you can see this was slightly a higher high, double bottom. We've held this very important structure, and we're starting to move up. here's another way of seeing it. I've showed you this chart so many times. Solana often has some of the most disgusting corrections out of any altcoins, and they consolidate for a little while, but then this is normally when you see the expansions for Solana are absolutely disgusting in bull markets. So I personally think we're going to be pushing up to these targets, which we've talked about in previous videos. 1.3k is really where I see Solana going. Of course, this is not next week, this is not next month, this is like cycle top areas that you need to keep your eyes on. And if you're wondering why I'm calling for $1,300 Solana, this is based on if Solana goes to Ethereum's previous all-time high in terms of market cap. From the prior cycle, not even this cycle, that would put Solana at $1,300, and based on those disgusting expansion fractals that we've seen before, I think this is a really good conservative bet. If you just copy and paste Ethereum's previous cycle leading it up to whatever it was when it hit that market cap, just based on copying the fractal alone, that could be around about a $900, $850 Solana, but based on the actual market cap, $1,300. That's where my price target's coming from. In the lower time frames for Solana, you've also got a very similar picture as Bitcoin. From the all-time high on this cycle, you can see we've got this trend line, all-time high, resistance, 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 and we're coming into resistance now. This is the exact same chart. If I show you over on Bitcoin, this is kind of the same resistance that we're seeing right here with this trend line here. So once again, 90k for Bitcoin, super important level. Over on Solana, we're pretty much here already, $140. I think above this level, we are going to start skyrocketing much harder. And also, you can see over here, stochastic RSI on the weekly time frame. We've held the most important levels, and we've got so much room to move to the upside. If you're looking at the monthly stock for Solana, coming in around about 15 right now, huge growth potential. Weekly has reset in beautiful confluence with these correction zones. So I do think we're going to be moving back into an expansion. I think it's going to start to happen super quick. So while I'm saying, you know, Bitcoin could take a little while to get to these levels, I wouldn't be surprised if it took Solana maybe 1 or 2 months, maybe let's say 4 weeks or so, until it's back up at $300, and then it's in price discovery again. So that's what I'm looking at. Super important levels right now, super important confluences, and if Bitcoin and Solana gets above these levels historically from these retests that we talked about with the TMA, huge moves could happen. Potentially 100% move for Bitcoin. Imagine what that will mean for Solana. In the context of the greater markets, I do think we're starting to see some good sentiment come back. We've previously talked about the insider transaction ratio for the S&P 500. Absolutely lollygagging in monumentally bullish territory. This means that corporate insiders are super confident. They are buying up their stocks at this moment in time. And once again, just from this chart, you know, they don't always buy the bottom, they don't always sell the top. But if you're buying and selling when they're buying and selling historically, you're doing pretty well. I think the S&P 500 is going to move back up to the upside very soon, and this kind of ties in with what we talked about over on Bitcoin with the transition period between presidencies. I think everything's lining up in the short term. If we're looking at investor sentiment for the general markets, looking at equities, the S&P 500, investor sentiment is relatively neutral right now, which in a bull run you can see has, you know, kind of spiked down at a pretty important level. You can see when we spike down 50 or below 50%, you can see this marked a bottom here, this marked the bottom over here, this spike marked the bottom here, here, tiny one over here, didn't quite mark it over here, financial crisis, so a little bit different than what we're in right now. But I think this huge spike to the downside in the Fear and Greed Index is a super bullish sign. If everyone's kind of getting ready for that transition phase, I think we've seen peak fear moving into the presidency, and I think things are going to start to resume from there. And corporate insiders are saying, hey, we don't care what the retail traders buying the S&P 500 are saying. We think it's going up. We're buying our stocks right now. And that's going to definitely say something coming into earnings season when they're probably going to be outperforming, because that's probably why they're buying. So that's pretty much everything right now. Again, super important levels that we're coming into confluence with right now. For Solana, it's $142. If we can start pushing above 150 and start sending it higher, that is a super bullish sign in my opinion, meaning that this is going to be the next expansion for Solana up to new all-time highs. For Bitcoin, just keep your eyes on this level. I really want to see us hold 87.5 for now. I do think it could be a little bit boring for the next week. That doesn't mean we can't push up to 92, but it just means potentially 92 and then 90 and then 90 and then 87 and then 90 and then boom. You know, this is what I'm kind of expecting for the next week or so. Don't think anything monumental will happen, but it's a step in the right direction, and I think we're going to be looking good this week, but looking a lot better the next few weeks after that. Also, another one, I keep on saying this one that I've got my eyes on, super good risk to reward ratio right now is OR. We are at a monumental level of resistance right now. We're struggling to get above between $32 and round about $40 or so. I think if we get above this level, this is one of the coins that could just absolutely send it to the upside. So in general, I'm not telling you to go out and buy, trade all your Solana for this, but my personal allocation is probably about 80% of my bags are in just staked Solana. About 15% of my bags are in Jupiter right now. If you're looking for a really good solid blue chip ecosystem play, which is actually generating revenue, that's what you want to go for. So 80% Solana, 15% Jupe, both of them staked. And then if you're looking for some small plays that you can mess around with 5% of your bags that could potentially, turn into 100% of your bags, then things like OR, that's what I'm looking at right now. In general, can't go wrong with staked Solana and staked Jupiter. Anything else is kind of just a short-term risky play. But that's all for today. Good luck this week, boys. I'll keep you up to date depending on what we do around these levels of confluence at around about 90k. But I think it's going to be looking up this week, and I think it's going to be looking up a lot more the next few weeks. I personally think 140k could be coming much sooner than we think. So all for today. See you in the next one. If you enjoyed the video, if you're still here, smash like on the way out, leave a comment for the algo. See you in the next one. Turn notifications on. Peace.